Greetings. This is Erick Widman from Passage Immigration Law and also from our nonprofit, the Center for Global Living. We have another solid set of questions to answer for you. Today, we've got some great submissions, and there are some exciting developments in immigration law pretty much every week. And the best area of law to practice is immigration law because it always keeps us on our toes. It's always interesting, and we get to help people every single day. So we love doing all that at Passage Immigration and also at our nonprofit. So we're going to kick things off with the questions straight away here. Okay, here's the list. First question: can I apply for citizenship if I've been in and out of the country the last few years? So the way to answer this question is to understand the requirements of the physical presence test and the continuous residence test. So you've got to meet what's often called the physical presence boots on the ground test. Are you actually within the United States for over 24 hours at a time for at least 50% of the statutory period? So the required statutory period that refers to how long you must be in the United States, looking back, depending on whether you're applying on a 5-year time frame or a 3-year time frame. So if you are, for example, not married to a US citizen and you have to show that you've been a permanent resident for 5 years and meet all the other requirements, one of those requirements is the physical presence test. So in the last 5 years, have you spent at least 50% of your time in the United States? So this can require a decent amount of math, thankfully not too difficult, but you're going to have to look at all the trips you've taken as you've been in and out of the United States the last several years and total up how many total days in the United States versus outside. So hopefully you comfortably exceed the 51% mark, because sometimes it can be a little tricky when certain months have 28 days or 30 or 31 days. So I actually recommend, what we do at our law firm is a date and time calculator. So plug that in, the dates you were in and out of the US, to make sure you know down to the very day if you qualify or not. So that's the physical presence test. The other test is the continuous residence test. This is a little bit of a gray area because there's some subjectivity involved in whether you've broken your continuous residence. So it's more of a ties and connections. What's your center of gravity? Where's your real residence? So US permanent residents are required to keep their ties and connections primarily in the United States, their job, their home. So you will have abandoned your US permanent residence if, for example, more than 6 months you work in another country. That in itself could create big problems. But if, here's a clear-cut example, you move, you no longer have a lease or a house, you have a job in another country, and it's been over 6 months, most likely, if you've been outside the US for more than 6 months, very good chance you've abandoned your permanent residence and you have not maintained continuous residence. And a pretty clear-cut standard is if you've been outside the United States for more than a year, you definitely are going to have problems keeping your green card. It might be void already, and you probably can't naturalize in that instance. All right. We love naturalization, so we could keep going on and on about that one. But hopefully I gave you a good overview if you can naturalize at this point. Next question: how can I get a resident visa? So in the US, if you're a permanent resident here, then you are a green card holder. So a US permanent resident is a green card holder, and there's a variety of different ways to get that all important, all highly coveted green card. but it's usually through family or a business or through some other pathway like humanitarian pathway or the diversity visa. Then, so the main categories: a family member petitions for you, an employer petitions for you. You could be an investor and you petition for yourself. You could be an extraordinary person, have extraordinary ability, and get a green card for yourself that way. EB1A category, for example. So there's a variety of different ways to do this, but those are the main categories: family member petitions for you, a spouse, a parent, a child. Those are the immediate relative categories of an employer. Or you could do a self-petition, and then you could, for example, if you were the victim or survivor of a crime, get a U visa and then adjust status. VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, which also applies to men, you can get a green card potentially through that, and the diversity visa. So those are the main categories. All right, next question. I have a fiance in the United States. Can he get married to someone from Jamaica who is in either a visitor's visa or a work visa? So this is intriguing. So I'm going to assume, based on this question, that you're the foreign national who's not the US citizen, but your fiance is in the United States and he's a US citizen, and you're wondering if he can petition for you or someone who's in Jamaica who has a visitor's visa or work visa in Jamaica. Or maybe, no, this may be what your question might be. If your fiance is in the United States and he only has a work visa or a visitor visa. Well, this one key thing to keep in mind: to get a US fiance visa, you're going to have a US citizen petitioner file the I-129F petition for you. So that hopefully will lend some insight and maybe answer that question for you. If your fiance in the United States is not a US citizen, he cannot file the fiance visa for you, that petition. But if the question is, if he is a US citizen and you have a visitor visa or work visa in Jamaica, for example, then that's okay. There's no special prohibition there. If you have a US citizen fiance petitioning for you, if you meet all the other requirements, you're eligible, you can go forward with that. You'll have a green light. Okay, well, those are great questions. Here's another broad one. What's the best possible way to immigrate to the US? So again, I'd hit upon the main categories and you have to assess which is the best and most applicable category for you. If you don't have any family members in the United States, if you're not dating anyone, you don't have a spouse or a parent or a child in the US, the family option is essentially limited. That's not a possibility for you in that case. So then you'll want to look at the business-based options, employment-based. Also, although it's not technically immigration, coming to the US to study here as a student on an F1 visa or an M1 vocational visa, that's a great option to find out if you like the US and to find out if you want to live here. And a common pathway for students is, if you do like being here, you get a degree and then you engage in optional practical training, OPT, or CPT, curricular practical training. And you can get paid, thankfully and finally, with that 1 year of work authorization, OPT. And by the way, if you're in a STEM field, you can get up to roughly 3 years of work authorization with OPT. So the US government's definitely encouraging those in a STEM degree field to keep going with work authorization. So you get work authorization, your employer might petition for an H-1B for you. And you could get an H-1B and then get a green card if your employer wants to continue or another employer wants to hire you. So that's a common pathway: student to OPT to H-1B to a green card. And then, of course, many people, just like me, meet a foreign national and fall in love and get married. And so that happens quite a bit. You might marry someone from another country, and then that opens up the family-based pathway. Okay. And then there's a general question about E3 information. So E3 visas, it's like an H-1B, but just for Australians. The US is showing love to Australians by providing them the ability to get an E3 visa. So you have to be in a specialty occupation. There's other requirements that our attorney David laid out very well in a different webinar we did. So we are going to post that on our website and YouTube. It's already there on YouTube on our Passage Immigration Law YouTube channel. And David gives a great overview of the E3 visa as an alternative to the H-1B. Well, I'm going to stop right there. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have other questions, definitely send us an email at support@passage.law, and have a great week. We'll see you next week.